Okay, so this is the second aggregate demand slideshow. Make sure you've watched the first one because that goes through in detail what the components of aggregate demand stand for and what they all mean. What we're going to do in this slideshow is to look in more detail about what causes each of those things to increase. So here is a recap of aggregate demand, C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So we're first of all going to look at consumption, and we're going to look at what causes consumption to increase. But if any of those things in the formula, C plus I plus G plus X, increase, or if imports decrease, then you're going to get an increase in aggregate demand, i.e. AD1 to AD2. So first thing though, I suppose, is that consumption is the largest component of aggregate demand. That's why we're starting with consumption. Consumption in the UK takes up over 60% of aggregate demand. So therefore, any policies which target consumption, increasing or decreasing consumption, is going to have a big impact on aggregate demand. So if we want aggregate demand to increase, then targeting consumption is going to be a good way of getting aggregate demand to increase. Similarly, if you want it to decrease, targeting consumption is the way to go. Later on in the course, we will look at policies to increase consumption. So that's just what we've talked about before. If C increases, aggregate demand increases, so it shifts to the right, and if C decreases, aggregate demand decreases. All right, so we're going to now go through the factors which cause consumption to increase. So the first one, which has got three parts to it, is falling interest rates. So interest rates is the money that you get on your savings if you've got savings in the bank. Interest rate is also the money that you have to pay the bank if you've borrowed money from the bank. So if you take out a loan or a mortgage, then that's what you have to pay the bank for the privilege. So first point is if interest rates fall, so at the moment interest rates are very low, it means there's less incentive to save. So at the moment interest rates are 0.1% in the UK. I remember there was a time when they were 15%. So you can see there's a very big difference. So when interest rates are 0.1%, any money that you've got in the bank is getting very little interest. So what that means is there's not much incentive for people to save. So therefore you're going to get more consumption. So C will increase. It also means that when interest rates are very low, it's cheaper for people to take out a loan. So people will take out loans to perhaps buy a car, to buy furniture, to buy fridge freezers. People take out loans to buy what we call big ticket items. If interest rates are very low, then people are more likely to take out a loan to buy these items rather than take several years to save up for them. So it means that consumption will increase. People that already have a loan or a mortgage being a loan to buy a house, it's given a special name, it's called a mortgage. Mortgages tend to be a lower interest rate than loans. But people that already have a loan or a mortgage, they will be paying less on that. So what that means is if they're paying less interest, they're going to have more money left over, which they can spend on other things, which means consumption can increase. Now, if they've got a fixed rate loan or mortgage, then that point is not going to be relevant. But if they've got a variable rate, then point number 3 is relevant. Right, next page, more factors which cause consumption to increase. So we're still talking about consumption here. Increased income. So if you have more money, then you're going to increase consumption. So you might have more income due to promotion, due to pay rise, or it could be income tax has fallen. So if you've got a fall in income tax, that means you're paying less out of your income to the government, so therefore you've got more spare, and that could lead to increased consumption. Increased consumer confidence. So at the moment, consumer confidence is low, right? So we're in the middle of COVID, consumer confidence is low. A lot of people are worried about losing their jobs. Nobody's really sure what's going to be happening over the course of the next sort of 6 months or so. So people are not really spending much. A lot of people are not at work, so they're not spending going out for lunch. Everywhere's closed, so we can't spend. But consumer confidence is low, so consumption is going to be quite low at the moment. However, when consumer confidence is high, so when things pick up again, then people are going to start spending. That means consumption increases. So hopefully in a few months' time, consumption will start to increase. Increased house prices. This is known as the effect that happens here that I'm going to explain is what we call the wealth effect. So this is only relevant for people that have a house. If you don't have a house, this is not going to happen for you. But if you have a house and the house increases in value, the house makes up part of what you might call your assets or part of your wealth. So your wealth has increased, so you feel better off because the wealth, the number attached to you, that what you're worth is higher. So that can tend to lead to an increased consumption. So you might not have any more money in your bank account, but it does still lead to an increase in consumption. So if you've not got any more money in your bank account, where does that come from? Well, it could be that people are more confident to spend some of their savings, knowing that they've got the value within their house, or it could be that people remortgage their house. So they take some of the value from their house, from their mortgage company, give back a bit of the house to the mortgage company, take some cash, and then use that to spend. That will usually happen if people want to, for example, build an extension or a new bathroom or a new kitchen. So increased house prices does tend to lead to increased consumption due to the wealth effects. And then availability of credit. So that refers to how keen the banks are to lend money and how much money the banks have to lend out. So if the banks are keen to lend out money and they have plenty there to lend, then consumption is going to be able to increase. So credit is the lending. So after the housing price crash and the credit crunch, banks became more cautious about lending money. So what would happen is there was less availability of credit, so less consumption. But if banks become a little bit less cautious, then there will be more availability of credit and therefore more consumption. But I can't see that being particularly likely in the near future. Okay, so that's consumption. So there's quite a lot there in consumption. There's a lot of different things that can cause consumption to increase. Obviously, the opposites will be the case for consumption decreasing. Now we're going to look at investment. So again, we've got interest rates. A decrease in interest rates mean that it's cheaper for businesses. Remember, investment is businesses. It's cheaper for businesses to take out a loan, to borrow money, to buy some machinery, to build a bigger factory, to train their workers better. So lower interest rates, lower cost of borrowing for them, and therefore more likely to spend on investment. Now, investment doesn't just come from borrowing money. Investment can come from their retained profit. So retained profit is the money that they've got left over after they've paid their taxes. So retained profit, a higher retained profit means that they've got more money available with which to spend on investment. A reduction in corporation tax. So corporation tax is the tax that businesses pay on their profits. So they have their profit and they pay tax on their profit. If they make no profit, they're not going to be paying any tax. So if corporation tax falls, then they're going to have more profit and therefore they can spend more on investment. New technology. So one of the things that businesses invest in is new technology. So if there's some new technology that comes out that they really want and that's going to improve their overall productivity, then they're more likely to spend that money on investment, perhaps even if the interest rates are high, because that technology is worth it. So if there's some new technology and they want it to better their products or be better than their competitors, then they're more likely to invest. Capacity utilisation refers to whether or not they're at full capacity. So are they making full use of everything they've already got? So are they using their whole factory? Are they using their machinery all day, every day? If they are at full capacity, i.e. they are using all their machinery, they're using all their factory space, all their workers are fully employed, So we could say they're operating on their production possibility curve. If they are at full capacity, then they're more likely to spend on investment if they need to expand. If they are below full capacity, so below their production possibility frontier, that means that they've perhaps got factory space they're not using. So to expand, they don't need to invest. It might mean they've got machinery that's not being used all day, so they don't need to invest to expand. So if they're at below full capacity, then they probably don't need to invest, unless it's perhaps some new technology that's come out that they want that's going to make things better for them, increase their productivity. Owner's interest. So that refers to the people that own the company. What are their priorities? Are they wanting to invest for long-term gains? Are they wanting to pay big bonuses? Are they wanting to give shareholders big dividends? So it depends upon the owner's interests. The owner's priority might be more long-term, in which case they are more likely to spend on investment to increase gains in the longer term. Government subsidies, that's money from the government that does not have to be paid back. So subsidies is free money, it doesn't have to be paid back. It's not just money to do what you want with though, it's usually linked to the firm spending on a certain thing. So it could be the government will give money to the firm if the firm spends a certain amount of money themselves. So it might be that the government matches the investment that the firm does by giving them the free money. So if government free money is on offer, then firms are more likely to spend on investment because their investment is effectively cheaper because the government's contributing towards it. And then business confidence, much like consumer confidence, if businesses are confident about the economy, they're more likely to spend on investment because they know that it's worth them investing in better products, more products, because consumers are going to be spending. But if consumers are not spending, then it's probably not worth them investing, unless they're producing an inferior good and the economy is doing badly and they are producing an inferior good, in which case those sorts of businesses are going to be thriving in a recession. Right, government spending. So that's the third component of aggregate demand. What causes government spending to increase? Well, in a recession, which is where we are now, the government spending is going to increase because we need help to get out of the recession. Government needs to help businesses, needs to help individuals, it needs to spend to get us out of the recession. When we're out of the recession, they don't need to spend. That's where they hope that they will recoup more money from taxes and then be able to pay back some of the debt. So in a recession, they get into debt, and then in a boom, they will pay back that debt. If there's an election coming up, government spending is likely to increase because they want to get votes. So they'll perhaps increase spending on local schools, hospitals, improving the roads, just so that they can get more votes and get elected back in again. Natural disasters, that can refer to many things: floods, tsunami, hurricanes. All of these things damage the country, and government needs to spend to repair the damage. Right, exports next, and then it will be imports. A lot of these factors are very similar, but we're going to look at them on two different slides. So factors that cause exports to increase. Remember, exports would be the UK selling goods abroad. So what's going to cause more of our goods to be bought abroad? So if incomes abroad increase, then you would expect them to demand more of our goods. They've got more money, they're going to demand more of our goods. Better quality goods produced in the UK. If our goods improve in quality, then hopefully other countries will want to buy them. A decrease in the exchange rate is going to make our goods cheaper abroad. If our goods are cheaper, more demand. Similar sort of thing is if the prices abroad increase, so if they have higher inflation, so let's say in France they've got high inflation, then that's going to make our goods to them look cheaper, they're going to demand more of our goods. Removal of trade barriers. Well, at the moment, we've kind of got the opposite going on with Brexit. But if trade barriers are removed, so an example of trade barriers would be tariffs on imported goods. So let's suppose America removes tariffs on UK goods. That's going to make our goods cheaper to Americans, and therefore they're going to demand more of our goods. So you can probably see for a lot of those, the opposite is going to be the case. Now we're talking here now about what's going to cause imports to decrease. So everything else was increase. Imports we're talking about decrease, because a decrease in imports is going to increase aggregate demand, because remember, imports are subtracted from the formula. So if incomes fall in the UK, we're going to buy less. What are we going to cut back on? We're probably going to cut back on clothes that are made abroad. So we're going to find that imports decrease if we've got less income. The quality of goods at home improve, or the quality abroad worsens. That's going to mean we're going to buy fewer imports. We're going to prefer to buy our own goods. Decrease in the exchange rate. Well, a decrease in the exchange rate makes the imports more expensive. So once you've changed your money, it makes the imports more expensive, so less demand for imports. Prices abroad increase. Similar sort of point. If they have higher inflation than us, their goods are going to go up in price quicker, and therefore less demand. We're going to demand less of their goods. Imposition of trade barriers. So if they put trade barriers on us, so if they put taxes on our goods, so let's suppose Europe starts putting taxes on UK goods, that's going to make our goods more expensive. But if we put, and then we do the same to them, that's going to make their goods more expensive to us, and that's going to reduce demand for imports because their goods now have a tax on. Likely our goods will have a tax on them on as well, so it works both ways. Oh, and that is the end. So all of these are things which cause a change in aggregate demand. Think about your aggregate demand formula. So if any of those factors in the formula change, then that's going to shift the aggregate demand curve.